Hello, thanks for joining me for another class in Fortifying Your Faith in a time of deconstruction. Deconstruction, sometimes called deconversion. We read more and more, I suppose because of social media, of people walking away from Christianity, deconverting. It's interesting to note, though, as I pursue this idea and look more and more, I notice also there are deconversion stories told by those who were previously atheists who are now Christians. So people are deconversions. It's just a time of a lot of different thoughts out there. And we're trying to build up your faith because it's not unusual for people to have a period of doubt. It's not unusual for people to come through a time where there's some questions that they can't seem to have answered. And so there's often times in our lives when we need to reevaluate what we believe and reinvestigate. Why do I believe what I do? When I was a teenager, I had some questions. There was a lot of talk about evolution and things like this when I was younger, and I really wasn't sure how to respond to those things. And I had a friend who said, "Hey, let's go to the Washington State University because there's going to be a lecture this weekend." And I thought, well, why would I want to do that? And he said, well, because there's going to be a lot of girls there. Well, I was a teenager. I was sure that'd be fun. But when I got there, I found the main lecturer was a man named John Clayton. He was a Christian man who was showing scientific evidences for why we should believe in God. And I had never heard anything like that before in my life. It was amazing. It was life transforming. It was just what I need. We should know why we believe what we do. And to be a Christian doesn't mean you have to park your brains at the door to come in. There are many reasons why we can be Christians, or we should be Christians. You see, faith is not wishful thinking. Sometimes people talk about blind faith. It's just blind faith. No, it's not blind faith. Faith is not believing the unbelievable. Faith is not trusting in some myth. Faith is evidence. The evidence of things hoped for. That's what Hebrews 11:1 says. It's evidence. There are facts. There are facts that are central to our faith. Reasons why we should believe. And I want to share some of those with you. Why would you believe in God? Why would you believe in the Bible? Why would you believe in Jesus? Does Christianity make sense? These are important things for us to know and understand. Well, why do you believe in God? And why should you believe in God? What evidence is there? Well, let me tell you, it's more than just an emotional experience. There are evidences for believing in God. Well, let's talk about the first thing. We know that something exists. We live in a place of existence. We know the earth exists. The sky exists. There are trees out there that exist. You exist. I exist. How do we explain our existence? How did we get here? Well, you could say, well, the earth has always been here. It's eternal. It's been here. And for many years, that's what scientists believe, this steady state theory that the earth has always been and it continues to be as it always has been. And then something happened with Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, you remember, he created the theory of general relativity. And one of the things that means is that there had to be a beginning of the universe. Now, over the years, more and more scientists have added to this idea and this theory until the point that you would be hard-pressed today to find any serious scientist who disagreed with the idea that there was a beginning. There was a Big Bang. Something happened that started everything. The creation, the earth, the universe, however you want to say it, it had a beginning. And so the question becomes, well, how? How did it begin? How does matter come from non-matter. Nothing comes from nothing. Everything comes from something. I mean, these are just truths that we know to be fact, right? I mean, you go out and you see the trees outside and you look at this gigantic fir and you say, where did this come from? And you know it came from another fir tree. Well, where did that one come from? Well, it came from a previous fir tree. And that come from, and that one, and that one, and that one, and you keep going back and back and back. And how far do you have to go back till finally you say it had to be a first one? There had to be a first cause of everything, because we know that nothing comes from nothing. That you can't create matter from non-matter. And so there is the law of biogenesis. The law of biogenesis says life comes from preceding life. Now, that hasn't always been thought of in the scientific community. Back in the 19th century, many scientists believed in spontaneous generation. That is, that life just began. You would get a piece of meat and it would start to spoil, and maggots would just spring out of that meat. You would put some dirty rags in a corner and somewhere, and pretty soon those dirty rags would produce mice. It wasn't until Louis Pasteur, the French scientist, came along and began to reevaluate these things that things began to change. In fact, Louis Pasteur, his early works were ridiculed by scientists. They thought that he was just crazy or something. But we know that he totally refuted the idea of spontaneous generation. He showed us that there was microbes. He is the inventor of microbiology. And there are germs. And we wash our hands today because we know there are germs. We don't see them. We know they are there. I mean, modern medicine was turned over. It was revolutionized by Louis Pasteur and his work. We even have a process called pasteurization, the sterilization, the killing of germs, these microbes that cause so many problems. And so we know that life just doesn't spontaneously generate. We know that life doesn't come from nothing. It comes from preceding life. It comes from something. And so if you begin with zero, you are going to end with zero. If you have nothing, you're going to end with nothing. So how did this universe get here? How did it all begin? How did it start? How did we have a Big Bang? Well, atheists will say that nothing rolled into something. Nothing rolled into something. And you say, well, how did that happen? And they will answer, they don't know. They don't know how something rolled from nothing. They believe that science will someday explain how it happened, but for now they don't know. They believe what they don't know, what they don't understand. They believe that life came from nothing. Nothing is the foundation for everything. And we have to be careful here with our language when we start talking about atheists and agnostics and theists and everything, because sometimes the atheists want to couch these discussions as they're between scientist and theist. Well, they're not between scientist and theist. They're between atheist and theist. I mean, many scientists are Christians. In fact, many people become Christians because the science leads them to that position. They look at all the evidence and they say, wow, look at what's going on out here. It shows that there is a God. An interesting discussion that I saw recently on YouTube, and I recommend this station to you. It's called Unbelievable, and that's what the station's called. There's only one Christian radio station in England, in the United Kingdom. And one of the guys who was helping with this said, I would like to have one show on this that is really to allow discussion between unbelievers and believers, not debate, but just open discussion where they can both openly discuss their different views. And this is a really interesting channel. And one of the shows they had was a discussion between Hugh Ross and Peter Atkins. Hugh Ross is an astrophysicist who is a Christian, and Peter Atkins is a retired Oxford professor who is a chemist who is an atheist. And they discuss different things together, and I invite you to look at that, because Atkins, he began in the Church of England as a little boy, but when he became a grown man and went to college, he left any kind of religious background and became an atheist. But Hugh Ross was not a Christian. He didn't have any religious background when he went and became a scientist. And he said it was the science itself, the discoveries that he was making, that showed him there was a God, and he became a Christian. He says, I know a lot of Christians who are scientists. So be careful how you couch the argument. It's not scientists against Christians. It's not even scientists against the Bible. It is atheist against theism. It is maybe science against preachers at times, because preachers don't always understand science as they should. But anyway, understand the argument. We're not talking about science versus creation, science versus Christianity. We're talking about atheist views versus Christian views. Now, science itself is in search of causes. What causes this? And they put forth a theory, investigate the theory, and either prove or disprove the theory. So, what's the cause? How did the universe begin? We call it the Big Bang. We can call it creation. We can call it the beginning of the universe. By whatever words, whatever terms you use, it had to begin somehow. So how did that happen? Now, we know it wasn't by natural force. You say, well, how did you know it was not by natural force? Because natural force was something that was created. It didn't exist until it was created. You see, force and time and matter and space were all created. It was all started at the beginning. However it all started together. There must be something then outside of nature. Something that is supranatural. Supernatural. Supernatural means outside of nature. Something outside of the known universe, something bigger than the universe, had to be the cause of it all. Now, how? Either no one caused something out of nothing, or someone caused something to come out of nothing. There must be an outside force that caused everything. Now, the Bible says it is in the beginning. God created time in the beginning. God created time and space and matter. And so, you go to the atheist and say, well, where did it all begin? Where did we all come from? And their response sometimes is, well, where did God come from? Who created God? No. The problem with the question is nobody believes the question. Nobody believes the question, who created God? The atheists don't believe the question because they don't believe that there's a God to be created. And Christians don't believe the questions because Christians believe that God is eternal. That God is outside of time, that God has always existed, that He is the uncaused cause, that He is bigger than time, He is bigger than space. The Bible describes what happened, how it all began. And this is what Christians believe. Is there a reason for believing it? Yes, because we know now that the universe had to have a beginning. Something had to start it. You ask an atheist, I don't know. Maybe we'll know someday. We don't know today. And Christians say the evidence points to God. Now, this discussion that we're having is sometimes called the cosmological argument, the cosmos, from the idea of the universe. So if you want to study this more, just go online and look up cosmological argument or the cosmological theory, this first cause argument. How did it all begin? But if you can't believe that something came from nothing, then you don't have enough faith to be an atheist. You must believe that there was a cause bigger than the universe that created everything. Does it make sense to believe in God? Yes, I'm just beginning. I'm just getting started. One of the first arguments you should know is the cosmological argument, that everything has a cause. Everything began somewhere. And where did it all begin? How did it all start? You can either say, well, I just don't know, and walk away, or you can say, it must be God. God is the solution. God is the answer. Now, I'm going to give you more evidence as we go along, more evidence for being a Christian than there is for being an atheist. I'm just getting started. And, there are so many good YouTube channels. There's so many good websites out there. I encourage you to find some of them. This Unbelievable was a good one. Cross-Examined is another good one. And there are so many reasons why we don't have to park our brains at the door to be a Christian. So much evidence. Hopefully this evidence, if you're going through a time of doubt, if you're going through a period of reevaluation, reexamination, you'll look at some of these evidences. Look at the idea of first cause, of cosmology, how it all began. Well, thanks for listening to me for these few moments today, and I hope you have a good week, and I look forward to seeing you next week.